Happy New Year, everyone. This is the bi-weekly meeting of the Storage Special Interest Group. Today is January 5, 2017. And today on the agenda, we've got a few items. We're primarily going to focus on 2017 planning. I'm going to start adding a couple of line items regularly to the agenda. They are design reviews and PRs to discuss that need attention. We're going to leave those as reoccurring line items, and anybody that has any design reviews that they want to go over or PRs that need attention, please add them there. And the idea here is I think a lot of these meetings have ended up being a lot about what the current status updates are on what folks are working on and potentially things that we want to work on in the future, but we haven't really used these meetings as an opportunity to do design reviews. Or discuss some of the PRs that are in review. A lot of that happens offline or at the face-to-face meetings, and I think we should try to use these meetings to do more of that. But that said, today I think is going to be a lot more about planning. Matt Delio sent out a link capturing a spreadsheet, which is posted in the agenda, capturing a lot of the ideas we talked about before the break. We can start discussing from there, and folks who have ideas, feel free to add to the spreadsheet. Matt, you want to take over? Matt, are you there?
Hey, sorry, my connection's a little screwy right now. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, so we've got the spreadsheet. I don't know how many of you had a chance to look, but I see a few people are jumping in right now. I would like to go through these one by one, and feel free to add some more while we're talking about it, and kind of prioritize what we think needs to be done as a group, and then kind of put down how long we think it's going to take to do. And if anybody wants to take ownership of it, that would be great. We can also put their names down as well. And if we see something could be broken down into multiple deliverables over the course of 1617 time frame, that would be great. We can split those up as well. So I have a feeling something like out of tree volume plugins is not something that's going to take just a quarter. It's probably going to take several quarters worth of planning, or maybe not. I don't know. So
before we begin, sorry, Matt, does anybody have any input into this process, what they want it to look like? Based on what Matt's mentioned, is there anything else that we should do or add or discuss or change in the process? Steve, I'm looking at you.
Hey, on quarter, how do you tie quarter to release? Is there any map between,
Yeah, so usually releases are quarterly. We're doing 4 releases a year at this point. 1.6 is targeted for the end of Q1. So 1.7 will be end of Q2 and so on.
Unfortunately, we've sort of drifted off of the alignment between releases and quarters because of the end of the year stuff.
Yeah.
So it's more like releases fall sort of 2/3 of the way through each quarter.
In that case, maybe I'll change the time required to be instead of a release instead of a quarter. That way, we can all be on the same page there.
No, Saad, this looks good. I think we're starting to formalize what order we work on things, which I think it's sort of been like a shared knowledge within the SIG, but like outside the SIG, it's been pretty opaque. So I think this is good.
Cool.
Also, on the schedule, if we have things that are more than one release, I think it behooves us to look at stepping it across multiple releases, right? So always, if we have a feature that's like snapshotting is something we probably could do over 3 releases if we wanted to. But I think it'd be better to have something that we could have, in each one of those 3 releases to get us up to the final product.
So how about having another column which is whether it's going to be alpha, beta, or GA? and then the time required would reflect that. So whatever quarter we have would reflect that particular. So for snapshots, it would make sense to go to alpha first.
Okay.
Yeah, what should we call this column? Any suggestion?
What do they call it in the features repo? I'd just say alpha, beta, or GA.
Okay. Yeah.
Another comment is there's some big features like snapshots. I just reiterate what I have said, but I just want to make clarify. So snapshot has a multiple use cases. Maybe some people want to have a consistent snapshots, and people want to have consistent groups. So if we can just make a target, which one we can deliver as which releases, so we can make a judgments whether that is feasible and whether that's something sufficient for product release. That's be great. That will be great. So my suggestion is to make the single column feature, and maybe we can just expand it somehow in the next matrix, so we can just track individual sub projects and sub features.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe just if snapshotting is something that covers several has several different features associated, I might just call those out as separate features, and that way we can prioritize them separately from. Unless it's something that if there's dependencies between them, then that's something maybe we need to deal with. But I feel like if there's different types of snapshots we want to support, maybe those are just different features, and then we just have different rows for those.
Right.
This is starting to look super like a release planning thing where what these are sort of more in the agile process are these are epics that are broken out into multiple user stories, and that's like the first thing. Like I'm already asking questions like, what does this mean? And it's showing the fact that we probably need a link to a proposal or something like that.
I agree.
Right. I think we need to take this in phases where we first propose what the feature set is, some of them to be implemented before others, then define an interface, because on many of these like snapshots, I would suggest there's going to be multiple implementations. I mean, ultimately, it isn't the mainstream Kubernetes code that's going to be doing this. It's going to be delegated down to the backend storage providers that in many or most cases are the ones that actually own and initiate these snapshots. So we need a modular interface so that multiple implementations can be supported. And this isn't just snapshots. This would apply to out-of-tree plugins and many of the other things on our 2017 wish list here.
Yeah. Agreed. Cool. With that in mind, since we're talking about snapshots, should we kind of have an entry just for defining the snapshot interface? And
yeah, maybe let's just start with features that people want this snapshot facility to support. And after we get the feature list, then maybe we've got the making of designing an interface to deliver it.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
But just to add to that, Matt, like the way we normally do that, though, is there's a proposal, right? So somebody would submit a proposal, and they would enumerate those features that Steve's describing, and then the community would discuss the proposal, and then we'd, and so that's kind of why I was saying, like, this is more of a tracking thing for proposals, right? And then what we usually do is we have design proposals, which are really more about design and consensus on the design. And then after that, we have implementation PRs, which is about like when the actual embodiment will land, right?
I agree. I agree with Steve here. So I think what we should do is focus on what the high-level areas are that we want to focus on rather than the details of any individual one. Prioritize those as these are the top maybe 5 or 10 items that the SIG wants to focus on for 2017. And then cut those down into what we want to focus on for Q1, assign owners or teams to each one of those features, and then those owners or teams can go out and do exactly what you guys are proposing, which is come up with the proposals for that particular feature, come up with the various possible implementations, bring it back to the SIG, report back the proposals, select a final design, and then move forward with implementation. So that means today, instead of focusing on the specifics of any individual area, as long as we think that the line item captures what we want to happen, let's focus on getting a complete list and getting a priority and the rest of these columns filled in. Thoughts?
Sounds good to me. Great. So let's start out with, let's just start at the top and then we'll go down. So hopefully everyone has access to the spreadsheet and has it open right now. Or maybe, tell you what, I can share my screen, right?
Yes.
Maybe that would be the best thing. Okay. Let's see. Share screen. Okay. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this. Let me know if you want me to zoom in. I think it's, I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the first one I've got here is the out-of-tree volume plugins as a feature. We discussed this a lot during the November face-to-face meeting, so I have a feeling it's pretty high priority. But just to get a sense, do we think this is a priority 1? Between 1 and 10, what do we think? So I know this is hard to solicit from about 30 people. I would say 1, but you know, someone chime in if they think it's something else.
1. I vote.
I'll go for 1.
Okay.
1. Yeah, 1. Although I'll just add that we're conflating near-term flex with CVI. That's those are 2 different things.
Okay, so maybe so maybe this is probably just, should we just call this CVI then?
There's 2 items that we definitely want near-term flex fixes, and we need to continue to work out. Now that the new year is here, I think it's time to hit the CVI topic in hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll call this one CVI, and maybe we'll have a Flex 2. Is that what we were calling it?
Yeah.
Okay. And this one's, I would imagine this is not a single release. This is going to take more than 1 release to do the out-of-tree volume plugins. Is that?
Definitely.
Matthew, this is okay. My understanding is Flex 2 or CVI, maybe one or the other is the same. Flex 1, we still want to extend the support for attached, detached, controller, and that
That's
stuff.
right. That's my understanding too, Shakti.
Yeah, mine as well.
Hang on, I think we might have confusion over what these names are. Are we calling Flex 2 the next iteration of Flex, or is that Flex 1.5? And what's Flex 2 then?
There is no Flex 2. That will be either CVI or Flex 2.
Okay. So then
Flex 2 is the major overhaul. What we're working on is Flex 1.1.
with all the extra API
Flex
stuff.
1.
Okay.
Flex 1.1, call it.
I guess it probably should be just 1.
Yeah. Yeah. And then CVI is more about long-term flex roadmap. So, so like the one immediate priority, I think, is what you have in column 3. Sorry, not column 3, row 3, which is the next iteration of flex.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have owners for the out-of-tree volume plugins that wants to kind of drive that and own it?
I'd like to be on the list, but maybe there's room for more than one person as big as this is.
I'm involved. I mean, I'm interested in helping shepherd the various discussions together, but I don't have the details to actually do the work.
Yeah, I've been working on this too, Shakri, so you can put mine in.
So,
a question for the team. Do we want to work on the next iteration of Flex in parallel with CVI? If so, then the folks who are owning it might be 2 different people. If not, if we can serialize it, then it could be the same folks.
Yeah, I think so the next iteration of Flex is like Chakri, right?
Mm-hmm.
So row 3 is, Chakri's been leading that. Chakri, do you disagree with that?
no.
Okay. And then row 2 is like not even defined yet.
Yeah, let's leave that TBD.
That's what Tim's saying. And I'm not, I'm not sure whether there's actual engineering tasks on that or whether it's just purely diplomacy.
I think it's, mostly just spec driven right now. And I don't know if it's just diplomacy. Like, I don't want to quite dismiss it as just that, but yeah, I think that it's not a crazy characterization either.
Okay. So for the next iteration of Flex, I'm assuming this one's also pretty high priority. Would we call it a priority 1, or what are we thinking?
Yeah, I think priority 1.
Yeah. Do you think we can do this in a release, or is this going to take a bit longer?
From what I saw from the last iteration of this, I think it's possible to do this for 1.6.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. It looked pretty close.
Okay, great. I'm still unsure what we want to do with this column. So are we saying that if we do it in the 1.6 timeframe, we're going to go alpha, beta, GA? Is that what this
So every feature that we propose needs to have an alpha, beta, GA proposal. So one thing that the larger Kubernetes organization now has a features repository where we track all the features that are shipping for a particular release. There's a template for each feature, and one of the fields that we define is whether it's alpha, beta, or GA. And that ends up dictating what it looks like in the release notes and what the documentation for it looks like, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So it's important for us to make sure that we identify early on what the state of this feature is going to be.
And just to be clear, not everything we do has to touch all steps, but we do have to think about them.
Okay. Okay. So this would be kind of a new, this is piggybacking off the original Flex. So
the original Flex was always called alpha. The reason for that was we were uncertain of the API, and we didn't want to offer guarantees if we broke it in the future.
Okay.
Moving forward, my gut feeling is that even if we add the attacher, detacher, and provisioning interfaces, we may want to keep the alpha designation in order to give us the flexibility to continue to revise it in the future.
Okay.
But any thoughts on that, folks?
No, I think that's right.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, it makes sense, especially if CVI is going to kind of be the ultimate replacement for it too. So schedulable storage, this is something that we've been discussing, I think internally. I'm not sure how much the SIG has talked about this, but the idea is that we would only schedule pods at high level. The idea is that we'd only schedule pods on nodes that support a given volume type. So it has to have the right drivers, have to have the right binaries. If it doesn't have all those things, we just won't schedule it on that node. And we would have something in the admission controller that would sit there and actually reject
Right.
Yeah, things that would not be able to be scheduled. And so this is a win, I think, for a lot of platforms.
It's also, I think, a big deal for one of the things that's coming up quite a bit across Kubernetes is fragmentation concerns. And I think this is something that we can do to help make sure that what's in the source code base is going to work, and we have more assurances will work across different OS images, and people can have a better handling of what happens in those sorts of different configurations. I kind of feel that this is a high 2 or maybe a low 1. I'm kind of curious what the community thinks. I know that at Google we're going to be spending a bunch of time and effort on this.
So I think, I see there is a relationship between 4 and 10 local storage support.
Yeah.
And if you guys want the schedulable storage, what you were describing, there is also another alpha feature. There is basically a request from the scheduler API. If you guys want, we can revive that and move that from alpha to beta. We are currently, data-wise, Diamante is using those APIs today and actually doing it.
So we should talk maybe about that offline. There's going to be more motion on local storage that I wanted to talk about when we got to it, or I don't know if people wanted to talk about it now. So you tell me. Actually, I'll talk about it now. I've been working with the Node team also, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with who Vish is, but Vish is going to be working and focusing quite a bit on disk management and disk resources. And he is also going to be working with the Google Storage team on local storage. And I think we feel that this is an area that is kind of past due at this point. And, I feel like it's definitely item 10 is a priority 1 item. I don't know if we're going to get it in 1.6, but I think we're going to have to make a lot of progress on it this quarter. And we're going to have at least 2 people on our side, thinking about this quite a bit this quarter. I kind of think I think it's slightly related to item 4, but I don't know exactly. I'm hoping we can keep them decoupled and not dependent on each other. I'll talk to you later about how you think they're related and how we can leverage that to accelerate them.
So I think there's like a lot of, when I look at the features here. Go ahead, Gopal.
I'm basically saying local storage support, either you do it by hand or otherwise, basically the very first thing which you said, scheduable storage, only schedule pods on nodes, right? So there has to be basically a notion of where this local storage is and what is it called. So you need some support of it from the scheduler.
I think the name of 4 is actually confusing us all a little bit. It's not really schedulable storage in that respect. So
it's more like capabilities, right?
Yeah. So let me.
It's like intelligent scheduling of storage.
Actually,
intelligent scheduling of pods for storage requirements or something.
Yeah. So let's take a step back. For number 10, what's going on in the node team is they're going to be looking at making the disk a first-class schedulable resource like CPU and memory. And I think that may be something that, so that you can schedule your jobs according to disk capacity and eventually disk IOPS. And they're going to be working with, the storage SIG to do this. I was talking to them about this. We're going to be spinning up a team of people to be working on this in, Q1. That, to me, is I think what you're saying about scheduling jobs based on the storage as a first-class citizen resource. And we're doing that partly in the node team because the node team is very focused on being able to export the node's resource management pieces. And we want to integrate with the system that's already present and leverage that while, of course, still working closely with the SIG and the storage team. The item number 4, maybe we should come up with a different name. And the idea here is that when you are asking to provision a pod on a node, that node is going, and and you provision a volume or storage associated with that pod will be able to actually, that node the pod is scheduled on will be able to support those storage requirements. So maybe requirements to schedule storage is a better name.
So how about storage affinity? Would that be a good term for this? Because this is basically affinity rules based on storage capabilities of nodes.
Yeah, I like that name actually. I don't know if that's a bad name.
Or just call it what it is: support from scheduler. That's it. You need basically APIs, or you need some changes or some help from the scheduler. So it just said there's a dependency on the scheduler. Right?
Well, no, this is the thing where I think is different now that I'm not realizing until you started talking about it. I think that number 1, there is scheduling based on the resource that is available. And then there's the other one, which is scheduling based on, I don't know, I guess you're right. They're both scheduling related storage items. I think 4 is going to have a lot of work on just making sure that your plugin will meet requirements of the node and then export that to the scheduler. And then number 10 is going to be more of, now that we know what all of the nodes can support, making sure when you schedule your job, both local storage, can be supported.
Can I offer that the distinction is about lifetime?
Yeah.
Number 4 is about scheduling ephemeral storage as a resource. My pod needs 10 gigs of disk to write to, and therefore you can schedule and enforce that. And number 10 is about durable volumes that are based and backed by local media.
Perhaps the distinction is that in one form, the resource is consumable. So by getting scheduled to the node, you used it up. In the other, it's just a characteristic that can be used for placement. Just a thought.
I think that's actually maybe a third dimension. in my mind, that was neither of what I was speaking of. Just to get, I guess, more, just one extra data point, and then we should probably move on. The item number 4, schedulable storage, is simply to prevent disk hogs from crashing. Right, we need to prevent, we need to guarantee isolation between processes, and storage is right now one of the biggest isolation escapes that we experience. Number 10, to me, is about providing the persistent volume abstraction that is backed by local media, which is required, or at least highly asked for, by many people in the SIG apps community who want to be able to do things like Cassandra, which has local media that doesn't go away when the pod gets rescheduled. There may yet be the third option, which you brought up, which is I want local media, but I need it to have characteristics X, Y, and Z. All 3 of them affect the scheduler. All 3 of them affect the node.
If I may add, number 4 also could be about durable volumes.
So we can make a long list of all. I think there's 2 things that are coming out of this. First off, I agree with Tim. These dimensions make sense to me. One, I think if we put the name schedule inside the name of all these items, it's not that useful because a lot of these things are going to it's a scheduling system in Kubernetes. A lot of what we're going to do is going to interact with the scheduler. I do know that the purpose of 4 is so that plugins can have more intelligent debuggability and more OS image independence, and that that's it. And one of the methods of doing that is integrating with the scheduler.
Should we break it out into all these separate features then? Like, that's like there's 4 different things going on here that relate to the scheduler, but could be broken out into different features.
I don't know. Like, I think centering things on the scheduler to me seems it's like saying, if you're working on the kernel, everything that deals with memory, we should, break it down into how we're using the memory. I mean, it's such a core piece. Everything kind of does. I guess to me, 4 seems like a very distinct body of work. And 10 also seems like a distinct body of work. I wonder if we're getting caught up on the naming a little bit, but I'm not sure, again, in this room, if we all understand what we're talking about. And if that's the confusion, then the names.
Can we work on 4 and 10 in parallel?
Yes, we can. And I don't think they're coupled with each other at all. I think they're independent.
Okay, so then let's leave them as separate items.
Does everyone not know why that is, though? I think that's what's important. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what they do, even if the names are confusing.
So if I was to summarize, number 4 is basically scheduler rules for based on storage capability on nodes. And this might be an example is one zone has certain EBS volumes, another zone has different EBS volumes. So when a pod is scheduled, you want to make sure it lands in the EBS volume that is accessible to that node.
No,
and
let me stop you there. I think number 4 is at its most basic. How many bytes do you need on the disk and how many bytes are available?
No.
At its most basic.
At its most basic, I thought the whole point of 4 was that, as I understand it, it would have more to do with plugin support. So if you were NFS, or if you were Cephalopod, or if you were Rook, or if you were any of these like Quobytes, or all of these different things that are going on, that when you tried to schedule your pod on the node, you knew that, when you try to schedule your job, you would know that whether or not you could land on a node that could support it, your cluster had the support for that or not. That's the point. I think the word capability to me is the central part of this feature. Knowing that your cluster has the capabilities to meet the storage plugin technology that you want it to have. And if it doesn't, it will tell you clearly why it doesn't, whether it's a kernel lacking or a distribution gap or something's broken. Whereas today, what you just get is a big can't mount. And also we have too much dependence on the OS image.
4 is also visibility of storage, like specific zones in Fiber Channel or something.
Yeah, it actually, Fiber Channel fit in there too. So I think capabilities of the cluster to support storage is, I think whoever said capability, I think that's really the heart of it. Can our cluster, is it capable of supporting the storage plugin technology that we want?
But in that sense, local storage support also fits that, because you're basically saying this local disk is visible on this one node.
Absolutely. So local storage could be one of those, technologies that you want to hit. But there's another piece with local storage support that needs to happen that I think is distinct, where we almost have to do like plug-in support for local storage. And this comes in several dimensions. One, we have to start teaching Kubernetes to treat storage as a first-class citizen, so that, in and of itself, we can schedulable, and maybe this is a separate item, we can schedule our jobs according to things like capacity of disk.
But then it's not local. It shouldn't be specific to local, because that applies to shared storage.
I agree, and that's just part of it. So one of it should be, let's call it storage as a first-class schedulable resource, and then or a first-class resource, and which will be shared by the node team. And then the other one is just local storage in general, and I think there's more work in local storage too. I think local storage has a bunch of different pieces that need to be done, and some of them fall under other categories of future work that we're going to be doing this quarter, and some don't. Some is particular to local storage. This is hard to convey. The more I'm talking about it, I realize that.
Yeah. Just in the interest of time, I think we've got everyone sort of on the same page. I know there's some things still to work out, but do we think we have enough information here to prioritize and talk about 4?
I think actually going back to Aaron's idea of breaking item number 4 into sub-items may make sense based on what Tim and Michael said. My understanding was closer to what Michael was mentioning, which is capabilities. But what Tim mentioned was also important, which is what are the resources that are actually available. So I think capabilities and resources are 2 distinct things. I
think Tim has another ask that he's asking for, which was not within the ask of 4 of what I'm thinking.
Right.
But should be listed. And also, I don't know if it's gonna, I don't know when it's gonna land.
Yeah. Let's add it to the list.
Okay.
And we'll call that like resource availability, maybe.
Yeah, and just also to let you know, though, disk is resource management in the node, which and also is where disk is resource management. Period is something that will get a lot of attention coming this year also.
Okay, so can you make a comment there, Matt, to say that this will be something that Node team may look at?
For the resource for 15?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right, great. So for number 4, we think this is probably a 2. Let's go with 2 because we got a full 10 we can play with. So you think this is a release? This is probably more than a release, I would imagine, right? Don't you think so, Michael? Or do you think
I would say 32 just for now. I mean, I guess I look at, Tim had a really good description of priorities recently, which was sort of like when you have a tower defense game, which enemies are closest to you. And the ones that are closest, the ones you put a lot of attention on.
Or higher priority.
As a SIG, I think storage capable scheduling is something where if we get a doc out in next quarter, we'll be happy.
Okay. So more than one release. Do we have an owner for it yet, or just?
Yes, probably someone in Saad's team. Put Saad's name there for now.
Okay.
Congratulations, Saad. New opportunity.
Okay, great. Snapshots.
I think one or 2.
Anybody disagree?
I don't know.
I don't know. Not everything can be 1.
So I haven't heard that much asks for snapshots. I think I've heard far more for some of the other features, things like local storage. I think people are really, really craving over. Snapshots, I think, is a nice to have, but nobody's really going, I'm not going to use Kubernetes because it doesn't have snapshotting.
So here's my thinking, and by the way, I agree with you, Saad. Damn it, you're right. I think snapshot should be a 2. The reason I'm pushing it is as the work that's going on in Federation, especially as right now it's trailing on its storage functionality, but I'm expecting by the second half of 2017, we're going to have to start doing things like replicating data, maybe across cluster. And by then, I believe having snapshot functionality is going to be very important. So
okay, that's 8.
2.
That's already there. That's 8.
Data replication is number 8. I think data replication and snapshotting are go kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. That's just one way of doing things. I mean, snapshots could be used regardless, and data replication can be implemented independently.
You know, I've been thinking about data replication, and I was wondering how much of it would be the responsibility of Kubernetes. Where I see Kubernetes is exposing a common API that a bunch of different storage providers provide, and then providing a consistent interface against it.
Agreed.
Data replication, I'm not sure how Kubernetes necessarily fits into that, because generally the storage system tends to be aware of where it is and figure out where it needs to replicate the data. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there is some consistent API that Kubernetes could expose to that? I think it makes sense maybe at the federated cluster level, but not necessarily within an individual cluster.
I think it's an API, exactly. It's just an API to the storage subsystem, and then storage subsystem is responsible for the moving of bytes.
But any thoughts on what that API would be? Like in snapshots, it's very clear that you have, for example, triggering a snapshot, listing a snapshot, maybe even restoring a snapshot. For data replication, what would that API do?
So before we actually develop it inside the SIG right now, I was actually proposing, Quentin Hoole did some really good work and some thinking about data replication in the federation context, and I can tell that SIG already has a lot of great ideas. I admit I'm a little snapshot biased based on my experience in network appliance. I would love to schedule sometime at the end of January, like a 1 hour, just out of a band meeting to discuss data replication and what this is going to be alike and how we may want to attack it. I don't know how urgent that is for other people. But I also think that as we stay on 5, I believe that Jing really wants to keep working on snapshots this quarter. So I think we can put her name there and anyone else's name who wants to work with her. But that is something I believe that she's going to continue doing.
Yeah, I would say that I feel like snapshots and replication are related. And that snapshots are a way of replicating data, but there's async rep as well. And I sort of list them both as 3. I think the data locality, especially in the big data use cases for on-premise, is really important, right? And so local disk, right? And I think there's some interesting tension there, which is that Kubernetes is a cloud-native platform, and public clouds have very little local disk, whereas on-premise, they tend to have a lot. And so we've been quite public cloud focused, but not quite so private cloud on-premise, clouds where they do have access to lots of local disk, 36 terabytes on average per node, and the guys using Hadoop and Spark and Cassandra and the NoSQL stuff really want to make use of that. So I would say, local disk exposing that, the PRs related to that are a higher priority than snapshot and replication. But I want to be careful about implementing. I know there's work already on snapshots. I want to be careful about painting ourselves into a corner because I think that has to be designed in conjunction with the replication. I think they can be implemented at different cadences, but I think the design should at least be cognizant of each other.
I buy that.
So we're going to do the meeting for the replication end of January?
Yeah.
Great.
And Sergey, do you mind driving that and just trying to make sure? And I admit I'd love to be there. And actually there's another person or two I know who aren't on the storage SIG but are involved in Kubernetes who have expertise in this area that I may want to draft today. So.
Sure. I'm probably more interested in snapshots, but I could sort of connect the two.
Yeah, so Jing is going to start driving snapshot stuff. She's been working on containerized mounts, and some of that stuff is settling down now. And I think that's going to be one big thing on her plate starting Q1.
Sounds good. Just connect with her.
Okay, sounds good. I'll leave the priority since we haven't really figured stuff out until later. Unless people want to put a priority down.
Feels like a 2.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly not one at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And I'm assuming it's going to take more than one release, so we'll leave that there.
and it is a doc at this point, I would think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Bring storage classes to GA. I think this one probably pretty high priority. Is someone actually actively working on this right now?
I think Jan's been doing a lot of work here. He recently sent out a PR that Tim commented on, going after we have complete consensus on this. I think he was making a trying to rectify the difference between selectors and storage classes. That was a big open design question from the last time we had a face-to-face discussion on this. So that design still needs to be finalized, and once the design's finalized, then we need to implement it. It seems plausible that we can do this in the 1.6 time frame.
Okay. I'll leave this, I guess, as a priority 2. Does that seem reasonable?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
We're going to have a lot of P2s. It's going to be hard.
I know, yeah, I'm a little worried.
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
P2 doesn't mean you don't work your tail off on it. P2 means that, we're not kind of, P1s are a very, very strong commitment. We're going to try to do it this quarter. P2 means that we're active, it doesn't mean we're not actively trying to kick tail on it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I kind of like having a few P1s and a lot of P2s, and then we have freedom to see where it lands.
Yeah.
Also, I don't see test here.
Yes, that's a big one.
I'm sorry to be that constant nag.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and add it to the bottom. And we'll prioritize it when we get there. External provisioner. So we have a comment. Is this already done? I think last time when we met before the break, people did bring that up.
It's done. We have a proof of concept for it. We have a design document for it. There's some library issues we're sorting through right now. So I wouldn't say that it's like in its final, its final version.
Okay. And this is okay. And so this would be probably a P2 or P1. What do you guys think?
It's tricky because it ties in with the next iteration of Flex.
Okay.
There's a piece of that's required here.
Okay.
Can
we just bang this thing out? I mean, who's owning this right now?
It's close. I've got a proof of concept for it that we're kind of debating around internally before I send it out to the group. But I look at doing that in the next day or so.
Is that Brad's dulcet tones?
Yes.
So Brad, let's just make it one. Let's work hard in getting it done.
What's missing to be done? Because
push it out the door, make it go G.
Okay.
Because it's so cool, and it's most of the work is done, and does that sound unreasonable or?
No, the thing that's going to hold us up is how we split up some of the shared controller libraries that we're still debating over, and we're not sure if that should try to go in the Kubernetes trunk. It really shouldn't go in our incubator NFS provisioner project. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're really trying to figure out where to put the shared libraries now, and then after that, we're done.
Okay, I think Jan was trying to say something.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, what's remaining to be done? Because from Kubernetes point of view, this is done. We need just some libraries in separate repositories.
That part, the libraries part.
Okay. Okay.
So it seems reasonable for this to go GA in 1.6.
Yeah, I would say this is part and parcel with the Flex 1 work.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Next item, encryption.
So before we go to the next item, can I ask a question? Like, how do you differentiate between external provisioners and the Flex? Like, what's the demarcation and why are they different?
That's a good question. So, Brad, do you want to take this?
So not every external provisioner will be a Flex plugin, but every provisioner for Flex will be an external provisioner. So if you want to write an external provisioner for a Flex plugin, that's the only way to do it. but you could write an external provisioner for NFS, AWS, EBS, something else in tree.
I mean, is that truly the case? Because I can imagine Flex exposing the create volume hook, and that would be a mechanism to be able to allow you to provision.
Yeah, and we could do Flex in tree. I mean, so you could have the Flex provisioner explicitly call out and put those API calls in there, and we've talked about doing it that way as well. It's just two different paths. And
so,
personally, the external provisioner path is probably the better path to follow and the design that we want to push more versus having it call out.
I would say leave both options available and let folks use whichever one they want to. And we don't want to, I don't want to GIMP Flex in order to make this the de facto. I don't know, that's just random thoughts.
So this is Chakri actually. From what I learned, like we just want to support attach and detach for the 1.6. Are we going to create and delete? Because that's required for provisioning volumes.
Right.
If we have
I was told that external provisioner was the way we would like the people to follow. So there is no need to extend the effects for creating and deleting the volume.
Yeah, so exactly. It'd be extra work to have an explicit call out to create and delete from the Flex plugin that's in tree, when you could accomplish the same work by using the external provisioner. Sure, we could say that we do both, but I think just for the sake of time and resources, we were going to do one or the other for the next iteration of Flex.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So what is the agreement? Are we going to do both, or we're going to do
Well,
one?
I would say we leave the second one, the explicit call out from the in-tree Flex provisioner for the next iteration of Flex, or whatever the out-of-tree volume plugins discussion, because I don't know that we necessarily need it. There's going to be a way to achieve that functionality without putting those calls in. So I don't know that we're going to actually want it, but maybe there's some debate there that we should have both.
It's a straightforward effort to support it, if you'd ask me. So, but let's see.
We've got 9 minutes left. Let's keep chugging through this. Let's see if we can get through the rest of this list quickly.
Yeah, so encryption, I know this one's probably got a lot of things we could talk about here, but does someone want to take ownership of this and kind of?
I question if this is something that there's anything Kubernetes needs to do here.
Right.
My understanding so far has been that encryption is owned by the storage system itself, and usually when you provision a piece of storage, you specify whether you want encryption or not. And our storage class interface is flexible enough to allow whatever set of parameters you want to pass. If that happens to be a flag to enable encryption, storage classes kind of already enable that. So my question here for whoever put that item is there anything for Kubernetes to do at this point?
So is this in encryption at rest?
Good question. I'm not sure. Who added this item?
I'd like a question instead to maybe rethink this, Saad. Do we have a kind of a playbook or some way of saying to someone, I want to encrypt my data, how they would do that, either on local storage or on, anywhere else? I mean, do we have any sort of way we can, as the experts in the SIG storage team, we can say encryption is something that's already taken care of, but how do customers, either enterprise or non, learn how to do it? And is it easy for them to do? Is it worth having someone go off and just figure that out and write that up? And, Google possibly even put the Kubernetes blog post to describe that.
Yeah, my gut feeling here is that this is something that is the responsibility of the storage system, and whoever is offering the complete solution, in this case, if it's GKE or OpenShift or whoever, can provide for their customers the mechanisms for doing that with their systems.
I still think like having a walkthrough of one way to do it, given that sort of responsibility, would be invaluable.
So maybe having an example.
Is there anyone who could sign up to doing that example? I don't think actually at Google we have anyone on our storage team who is qualified to do this. Otherwise, I'd volunteer for it. I think it'd be really cool.
So just a quick question. I mean, like beyond like setting encryption to true for some provider specific thing in a storage class, what would the example actually show?
Is it more of a local storage thing? I don't know. Like the fact that you just said that in and of itself is something that I would argue that civilians, I'm going to say civilians as people who are not, as aware of Kubernetes or storage would be aware of. To you, it's obvious and simple. To other people, they may not even know. I'm going to Google Kubernetes storage and encryption right now and then ask how that works.
Well, the one thing I can envision that might go beyond simply a true-false setting is some sort of management of the decryption key.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe, and just in the interest of time, maybe we should move on. And if anybody does have thoughts on this, they can take ownership of it.
I am just looking for, is anyone at all interested in just sort of taking ownership of a best practices doc or a walkthrough? Complete, utter silence.
So I think that kind of gives us the priority from the SIG.
All right, I'll go look for somebody to do it then, maybe on our side. And I'll maybe try to talk to Steve Watt or somebody.
Okay. So I started local source, but I think it's a priority 1. I think it sounds like we could do this in 1 quarter.
No.
No?
No, Matt.
All right. So alpha or just design?
Design.
Yeah.
Yeah, design.
And do we have an owner?
I know Saad, this is news to you. I know Vish will be involved in this, and I think Vish and Saad for now, and we'll put more people on it.
Great.
And if other people in the community are interested, please, I really like this to not be a Google-only one so that it gets the best solution possible.
I was at eBay a couple of weeks ago, and they were very, very interested in working on this, so we'll have to make sure to reach out to them. I think they had an internal solution for this that they were keen on sharing with us.
Okay. I also think that it has many dimensions, so we'll be defining it as we go a little bit.
Okay. So I'll leave a TBD for any third owner or whatever, multiple extra owners. Let's see. Let's move on to mount option path. We only have 4 minutes left. So mount option pass through. This sounds like we've got something that's already got a PR for.
Yep.
So what priority do we think this is?
Kwamin, how upset would you be if this did not get into 1.6?
It's a decision making.
It's a fairly high priority. We have bugs that we can't fix.
Yeah, I think it's a 1.
Yeah. This allows us to work around some issues with NFS that we can't.
And I think the reason that we're going to make it a 1 this time also is that it makes sure that we get, so that person can say, hey, this is a 1 for 1.6, so that it really needs to get the reviewer bandwidth that it needs to.
Okay.
And this is going.
So it has to go to GA because this is this is a change to the API.
Okay.
Owner here would be Kwamin, I think.
Okay.
And also, can you list a reviewer to make sure that they have a reviewer also?
Yeah, let's add in I'll add in a.
We can fill that out.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, great. Stabilizing AWS support for EBS.
That seems like it should be P1. It's been pretty bad in the last couple quarters.
So here's a question that I was talking to Justin Santa Barbara about. I don't know if this is something that actually requires, the reason it was listed here, as I recall, was there's kind of this idea that because AWS volumes throttle differently and can give out of order operations, that it might require an architectural change to how we do things in Kubernetes to support them. But then Justin kind of came back and said he might be wrong on that. We were going back and forth. So this might not be a big effort. It might just be fixing bugs.
Some small bugs. Okay.
Yeah, so we leave this as kind of a question mark and get back to Justin SFB.
Okay.
Do we have a list of what this covers? I mean, I know that there are some AWS bugs. I know that we've stepped in a few of them. So we have some we want to fix 1.6.
So I've been kind of having offline conversations with Justin about this stuff, and and we were going through them, and I basically said, look, I made the suggestion of making this an effort for this quarter, and he said, let me get back to you before we open up that can. And
we don't have a list of what's wrong with or what's unstable with AWS.
Right.
Okay.
So he does have a list, and whether or not, but the other thing is because there were so many fixes going in, he couldn't tell how many of that list was up to date.
Okay, yeah, exactly, because we did do like 4 or 5 fixes in the last few weeks, and I wondered if that was enough to satiate this.
Absolutely. So maybe we can, Saad, can you volunteer to get back to Justin SB and find out?
Yes, I can do that.
Thanks.
Okay. Sorry. Enable metrics on volume controllers. Do we have a priority on this one? It seems pretty important, but probably not a P1, maybe a P2 or P3. Does that seem reasonable? I'll go with P2 for now. Feel free to upgrade it. I think, so we've got a PR out. I haven't looked at it to see if it's...
It's an issue right now. Once we get approved, then we can come up with a PR.
Okay, that's an issue. Okay, got it. Does it seem like it's something that's going to take more than 1 quarter?
If we get approved, then a quarter should be sufficient.
Okay. And this would be a GA type thing or an alpha?
I would say GA.
GA? And you're the owner, right? Or
yeah,
okay, great. Awesome.
So number 13, I'm not sure how ready they're going to be this quarter.
Okay.
As I've been I just passed off the mantle of TL-ship, which I had for 3 whole weeks of Federation, as one of the TLs left and a new one just showed up. And I think that there's a lot of stability work they need to do, and they have some interesting ways we're going to be approaching state. So I don't think we have much to do this quarter besides maybe figure out our ideas on items 5 and 6.
Yeah, I concur. I think it'd be good to know, like, Michael, is there, it'd be nice to know what they're thinking so that we could trade ideas, if the Federation folks are ruminating and stuff that sort of touches on the replication and snapshot and stuff.
How about I provide an email to the storage SIG with some of the things and conversations that have been going on in the Federation, and
Cool.
just leave that, just an email. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Wonderful. Or actually, I'll get maybe Christian Bell, who's one of at least the Google TL for that now. I may ask him to do it.
Okay. All right, so have people started dropping off? I know we're just over time, but let's try to blow through the last couple right here. So resource available scheduling, this is closely related to what we talked about earlier. I would assume this is also a P2. I'm going to stick my neck out and say that. It's probably a design type thing, so docs. And Saad, do you mind being the owner for that for now, or does someone else want to take that responsibility?
Why don't you throw me on that for now? Because I'm kind of coordinating storage and node team efforts here. And
Okay.
we'll probably be seeing as the holidays are over, we're getting our act together, and you'll probably see some activity on the SIG mailing list.
Okay, cool. And testing, this is a very broad category, but I think this is definitely a P1. I think we should always have testing on the top of our minds.
How did that go last quarter? Like, where are we now, Aaron or Saad?
We're in a better state than we were before. What we did for the last quarter was go through a bunch of different bugs and highlight areas where we had regressions in the past and try to write end-to-end tests to patch those, or unit tests to patch those. So a bunch of tests were written. That said, we still have a huge gap. So a lot of that testing was for the core Kubernetes functionality. Things like attach, detach, mount, unmount, what happens when kubelet restarts, things like that. We still have work to do on those areas themselves, because so far we just added regression tests. We didn't go through them methodically and say we have full coverage. Then the storage volume plugins themselves are completely exposed at the moment, meaning, for example, if there's a big change in Ceph or something breaks Ceph, we don't notice it. So that's a big open question of how do we make sure that volume plugins continue to remain in a working state release.
And the third one, Saad, I think, would be the destructive testing that we've started to work on. So
Yeah.
that's still
Aaron,
being involved.
what's really important to me is, Aaron, I know the last face-to-face, it was very evident that there was not enough attention to the testing effort and that there was good work being done but not getting review bandwidth. Are we still in that position?
I think we got some good attention to get some pieces completed before the holiday. I want to continue that momentum as we move forward, though, to make it a priority. It's also becoming a priority for this, CI type environment within OpenShift. So I think that's going to facilitate, making it more of a habit on our side as well. But I think we need to not focus on so many features and less test. I think we need to have, maybe as part of our reviews, that we do have testing and coverage, so that we're not doing this in hindsight. Because that's really what Saad and I have done. Is it's been, though we're trying, it's still a reactive testing design instead of in line with the actual feature.
All right. So side news is hired now. We have 4 people in the Google storage team for Kubernetes, dedicated 100%. It's kind of weird in that we've only really kind of had one for like 6 to 9 months, because either A, we had a new person, or B, Saad was release czar. And now we've got 4. So I'm hoping that this will both help with review bandwidth and also help with the testing workload.
Mm-hmm.
Saad, am I crazy?
No, that's completely fair.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. That's all I got.
I think that's everything. I'll take a look at this list. I'll prioritize it. I think we've got owners for pretty much everything, which is great. And if anything comes up, we can talk about it in the next SIG meeting.
We have 1 reviewer listed, dude. That's not a recipe for success.
Sorry?
We have 1 reviewer listed. That is not a recipe for success.
Oh, yeah. We should. Yeah. People could go through and assign themselves as reviewers. That would be great too.
Also, I want to make sure that this continues. I think of people, I don't want it just to be Googlers as always the reviewers. I trust Jan very, very much. I think Wamin also has like commit access and should be reviewing stuff and expertise in too. So, I don't know, like Steve Watt or Brad, we should also be talking and making sure that as we think people are, I don't know, aching and ready, we should talk more about that. That's all.
Yes, we have a couple guys that are getting real close to being ready for that. But we talked about that offline.
We'll go back and forth, and I promise it'll be contentious, but I also think that these are the different conversations that we need to have to make sure that we're successful.
Can we discuss what the next steps here are? So we're into the 1.6 development cycle, and a lot of these features are for 1.6, and our next meeting is in 2 weeks. Instead of waiting for the next meeting to figure out what we're going to do next, could we maybe start that now?
Yeah. I think, why
don't we do that in the feature repo, right? You can put it in the feature repo and then assign the milestones. And so can somebody, like, I don't know, Matt, do you have the bandwidth to go to the repo and for everything that doesn't have a milestone associated with it, send that to the SIG storage list, and then we find owners for each one?
Yeah, I can work on that.
So basically anything that we marked as for this particular release and P1 should definitely have a feature repo entry, and those owners should start working on those items immediately.
Okay. Sounds good.
And lastly, how do people feel about the storage SIG? Are we happy? Are we angry? Are we frustrated? And I know saying so openly here, and I don't even know if this is recorded or not, may not be the most comfortable place, but, if you've got feedback, please, let's not wait to the face-to-face to get things out the door. I think in general, people have been pretty open and cool, but I want to make sure we don't lose that as the SIG gets bigger and bigger, and it's pretty big. I was actually really happy when I think Jeff Vance found me on the face-to-face and said, "Ruben, I'm writing all this code and no one's reviewing it. What the hell?" That was really good feedback, and he was actually a lot more polite than I was. I'm just not I should be in general. But that's how we address these issues. And Brad also cornered me and was like telling me to poke a ton of holes in some of my technical ideas, and I think from that came some very, very neat designs. And so we need to make sure that we keep doing things like that.
Yeah, completely agree. And to echo or add to that, this is kind of the first time that we've done a real official planning session with the storage SIG for Kubernetes. If there's any feedback, please let us know. And we want to improve this process and make sure we continue to get better.
Cool.
All right, let's call it a day. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Actually, I think, Vlad, you had an item that you added. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
I just need somebody to take a look at that PR so it can go through the, start going through the testing process.
This is the lib storage PR, right?
No, this is a new one. This is specifically for one of our Dell EMC storage product called Scale.io. And this particular volume plugin is a standalone plugin for Scale.io.
Got it. Brad, would somebody on your team would be able to start taking a first pass at it?
A first pass at what? I'm sorry.
Vlad has a new storage plugin from EMC, and he needs a reviewer.
Yeah, somebody's assigned already. I just need somebody to tell the robot that it's okay to test at this point.
Okay. So let me be frank here. Are we going to be checking in new plugins, or are we going to try to go through the Flex interface?
So from last time when we, I think when we had before Christmas or before one of those meetings, that was a question that I brought up specifically because I know this was coming, and the consensus was yes. At this point, we're still in the position where the community is still accepting plugins. So
yeah, I think that's fair. Right now,
if it's changing, I need to know that as well too.
Okay, so I'll say this. I mean, if we go through and review the plugin and it drags us out past 1.6, but we get the Flex stuff into a finalized state, what do we do then? That's the risk, I guess, it runs. If we can't get it in by 1.6.
We're still going to be calling Flex Alpha, and if you want a volume plugin that is going to be quote-unquote production ready, you probably don't want to rely on the Alpha API. And right now, the only GA API that we have is the internal API. So I think it's okay to add volume plugins at this point. If they need to be converted in the future, that's okay. Ownership for volume plugins rests on the ownership of the person who writes the volume plugin. If it falls into a state of disrepair, it's on the person who wrote it.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, we can definitely review it. I'll have myself and some other guys review it.
All right, thanks, Brad.
Thank you, guys.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I got one. Thank God you're back, Saad. No more release hardness for you, okay?
I'm happy to. All right, guys, take care and Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Happy New Year, guys.
Bye.